Okay, we are live. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our first Indie Author Live chat of April 2024. I am excited to be back with another author. We have Winnifred on. Thank you so much for joining us. This is such a pleasure just to get to meet you face to face.
Yes, thank you for having me. I was really excited to hop on and do this interview with you because I've watched some of your other ones and they're really great. So I was excited to share my knowledge and, just chat.
Yes, I'm very excited to chat. Hey, Luna. Hello, everybody joining on YouTube and Twitter. We're doing this live. So if you are watching live and you have questions for Winifred, you can drop them in the chat as we go through. And if you're watching the replay and you're like, no, I missed it, leave your questions in the comment section because I do read them, I do check them. I can get those to Winifred and get answers back to you. But Winifred does so much in the indie author community. It is ridiculous how much you do. We had a mutual acquaintance who's also been on the channel, Lillian. Huge shout out to Lillian.
Yes, Lillian.
I'm very excited.
Great.
Thank you, Lillian. Lillian's getting ready to launch her own book, but we'll talk about that another event. I'm going to see if I can get Lillian on the channel too. Knock on the desk here. But Winifred, you write, you publish for other people, you're active in the community. How did you get started in all of these bookish things and the indie journey?
So it for me started when I was younger. I've always been a storyteller and a lover of reading and writing. And when I started, I believe, say, oh, hi, in 2017 means when I started writing my first novel. I was encouraged a lot by family and friends to, just take all these stories I keep telling them and put them, like, just try to see if I could write a book. And I tried it and I loved it. And 2019, I published. I did my research and I self-published. But I didn't do enough research because I had no clue what I was doing. So after about a year of trial and error and doing more research and kind of, asking people like, what do I do? How do I get things? How do I get an editor? How do I get all of these things? And I republished my first book and then published the second book in the fantasy series. And from there, I've just been, I just took off. And I really found a great community. The indie author community is so amazing and so supportive, and just full of so many amazing creative people that I love to support. And I was so happy that love to also support me, and give me advice and help me and guide me. And as I continued throughout the years, I kind of wanted to find a way to do that back for others who, you know, don't necessarily want to take a whole year to, figure out everything, kind of want to start with knowledge. If I can help someone, start their indie career, not like, okay, I'm just going to publish a book and become a best-selling author in 30 days, because that's exactly how that works. Um, then that was something I would be proud of, to, just be able to help and give advice and support to people who usually either didn't have that platform to get that support or just didn't know where to start. So that's kind of how I fell into this community and now this business.
Mm, yeah, and I think that's really inspiring to me. If people follow the channel, you know that I attempted to start a press a couple years ago, and it was a very tough uphill battle, and actually ended up letting that sort of go for reasons that are in the blogs if you want to go look it up. So it's been so inspiring to see you accomplish something that I know is so incredibly difficult and inspiring and helps other people. And so, one of the questions that I actually had when I saw that you said you were going to start publishing is whether that is going to make your books traditionally published now. If this is a hybrid situation, are you still going to technically be indie? And what does that mean for someone who's new to publishing, who's hearing this stuff for the first time, like going with a smaller press or a hybrid press as opposed to we've all been warned about, vanity presses and stuff like that.
I think I will still fit in the indie category, mainly because again, just because, fun fact for people who don't know, just because you publish under one company does not mean that you are obligated to publish every book you write for the rest of your life under that one company. And I know again, I have a lot of great and amazing authors I know that have asked me to do anthologies with them. And I'm like, of course. And I know that won't be underneath my press. And I know, like, again, I'm working mainly only with other small businesses and indie authors and writers and editors, etc. So it is still very much an indie run, led, and supported um, publishing company. And then it does have the hybrid aspect to it too. And it technically can be traditional. I do offer a traditional like package for people who are starting off, but regardless, I always tell anyone who's interested, like, you have to be hands-on when it comes to publishing with me. You're not just going to give me your manuscript and then come back in a year and be like, okay, where's my book winning? Like, no, like every month I check up on you. We sit down, we talk, we discuss our action plans, our homework, what you're doing, what goals you have, what part in the process you're finished with, what part in the process I'm finished with, because I really wanted to make this a not only supportive area, but open, um, especially with communication. So my authors know, what's going where things are, what process we're taking, why we're doing these decisions versus excuse me, versus these decisions. Um, I just really wanted to be, again, open and honest. And I think that's kind of what develops me a little bit from traditional publishing, because I do want the best for my authors. I'm not just here just to make money. Like, yes, we want to make money from our books, but that is not the sole purpose of doing this. The sole main purpose is to support, advocate, and uplift stories and voices that usually don't get that shine in the industry.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that shows, your care not just for diversity in authors, but also in readers. One of the things that struck me, because we were talking before we went live about how I've added your God's Scion books to my list, and I was reading through just a little bit of it and was blown away by the fact that you tackle things like mental disorders, addictions, the weight of political, basically, responsibilities on young people and their families and their ability to have constructive families, all in a very intriguing fantasy world. But you're tackling real life issues that may be skirted around, especially in the bigger presses these days, it seems like. Was that intentional when you first wrote and published your book, or did you write and publish that, and then this has all spiraled out of there without you knowing it was coming?
No, it was more of a. Originally, my first book was supposed to be a standalone, and then I finished the first draft, and I looked at it. I said, "Yeah, this isn't going to be a standalone." And then I kept going, and I just kind of mapped out what I didn't know how it was going to end immediately, but I knew that these issues that I do bring up were going to still be highlighted. We're still going to be prominent, and are still prominent in throughout now the fifth book that's coming out this August in the series. So thank you. But yeah, I really, again, I thought when I was writing too, like you said, like in bigger presses, they tend to steer away from the more complicated issues, or in my case, I think important issues that we deal with in the real world, or it's very, very diluted, to where you have to kind of squint, like, I think that's what they're trying to say. But I really wanted to be prominent. Like, this is what it is. Like, I'm not like there's no metaphorical, like, no, these people have issues, these people have, demons in their own closets, and they, fight, or they're fighting their own demons, and they're trying their best, and sometimes their best is still sadly not enough, and they, that's just life, that's how they have to roll with the punches. So I really wanted to make a fantasy world where it still was whimsical, but still rooted in a lot of realism, and felt just as real as the dragons and the fairies and the magic that's also intertwined with the story too.
Yes, and I know Luna's on. Luna almost always asks, "There are dragons, Luna. Here's another book for your dragon list."
Yes.
Oh goodness. So yeah, you're bringing in a lot of real world issues, but you've got them in a fantasy setting, and then you have the originality of mythological fantasy, which is one of my favorite subgenres. Just yes, Luna, dragons. Mythological fantasy. When you were developing the mythology side for yours, did you draw any inspiration from like real life myths? Is this something that you had to sit down and like completely develop from scratch?
So, for most part, it's loosely based off of African deities, and some ties to Greek mythology, but it's a lot more diluted. That one is really watered down, but most of it was me kind of just uh, writing it from the ground up. I started with its four main gods, so the god of time, space, death, and life, and then from there, it kind of has their, like, they have factions. Like, okay, under time is sleep, the seasons, time travel, and then you see those deities, and then under them you see their deities, and then under them, so you kind of just see that, uh, like kind of like a family tree of how it expands into the world of like who does what and how things work. But most of it, yeah, came from my noggin, and again, just my love of mythology and just reading on different cultures and their own deities, kind of compiling them, um, and seeing like what I really did see or didn't see in other mythology. Like a lot of them don't speak too much about the time god. They're usually just kind of put on the back burner. They're like, yeah, time, Earth. Now let's get to Zeus. Like we they it's not as fleshed out, because these are kind of seen as the deities that are, they're the first ones to come about, and they take a, a back seat to like the ones that usually um, enact on Earth. And I wanted to play with that and think, okay, well, what if they had more of an influence in the world, so much so that they still take a back burner or a back seat, but are still very prevalent and active with the humans and the other creatures and races within the planet too.
Yeah, yeah. And I think I love that you also bring in here's their appearance that's influenced by this. And I feel like just from the little bit that I've read of the very first one, I'm almost like, oh, is this some of the personality of these deities that are showing through these people? So I don't have to know yet. I'm gonna have to read to find out. If you're watching
I
and
don't
you're
want to
like,
spoil anything.
don't spoil. If you're watching and you're like, oh, I want to read these, read more of this, give me the dragons, then you definitely want to go in the description box and click the link to Winifred's site and check out the books. Which time god? Kronos?
Oh, so actually, it's my own. Yes, Kronos, time god from Greek mythology, but it's my own god named Tempest. They are the god of time and the second oldest god in the series or in the universe. Before them came space. So it's space, time, life, then death. Death is the baby of the family. But Tempest is also the main for book one, is who you focus on is Tempest and their children. So the children of time, and you focus on them and their acolyte, who is Roderick, or Prince Roderick. And each god has their own acolyte who acts as their surrogate person on earth too. So you have that layer of, again, how they are still taking a back burner seat in the world, but still actively present, because again, their acolytes are the ones to represent them as, again, stand-in gods on this planet. So yeah, but yeah, her name is Tempest, or their name is Tempest. They're an all-seeing being, so they are whatever they want to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really love writing them when I can, because they're actually one of the harder characters for me to write, just because I don't want to spoil anything, but and let me just say, they're one of the harder characters to write, just because of their personality and how, again, they interact with the people of Earth, because they're not a person. They're, they represent time, what has happened, what hasn't happened, what is happening. So when real life things happen on Earth that really don't, say, affect time as much, they're kind of like, okay, like, what do you want me to do here? Like, like, so it's really interesting to write someone that you're supposed to give humanistic characteristics to, but also not, because they're not human, and they're not characters that fully understand what it is to be a person and have those, like, all these diverse feelings and emotions too.
Yeah. And yeah, just like Luna said, lots of creativity to be found in time-based abilities.
Oh yeah.
So
Oh,
with all
don't
the
I know
world
it?
that you've got and all the books that are still being written, I mean, there's already some books out. I dropped the link in the chat for people who are watching on YouTube. Um, how do you, as someone who has an indie book business where you're serving other authors as well, how do you manage to keep your own voice and your own world separate from the other books that you're working with?
For me, ironically, I find myself publishing more people outside of my genre than inside of my genre. So that gives a layer of like separation. Also, I do, again, compare like how I speak in the books to other fantasy authors that I know and love, and I've purchased their books and I read. And then I also, again, make sure like I am giving myself breaks and space and time, no pun intended, to, look through my work and make sure Winnie's the one who's writing this, and not one of
Mm,
my authors. Um,
mm,
I usually do kind of not, I usually only really look at other manuscripts if, it's the first run, when it's been submitted, and then maybe during the editing process. But I usually leave that to our other editors on the team to do that, because, again, I don't want to be too over influenced, and I don't want to also over influence someone else's story. My A big thing I always tell my authors, like, I want your voice, your story to be the loudest in your book, not your editor, not me, yours. So I usually try to make sure like there is that happy medium where like we are, bouncing off of each other. We're giving ideas, um, we're giving critiques, we're giving feedback, but we're still trying to still make sure this is your voice, this is my voice, and we're keeping them separate so they still, again, don't sound just like Wynn's books is, just wrapped around this. Like, I want it to be separate, because that's the whole point, is to make sure that these diverse outlooks, perspectives still have their own unique voices within these stories.
that is such a good point, too, that it could be easy. I know on the publishing side, you pick up a book by a brand and you know how it's supposed to feel or sound because you're just used to that brand. So that's really interesting that, you're going in going, I know that's the norm, but I'm going to buck the norm here. We're going to keep everything, diverse and unique. Um, yeah, business. Yes.
Thanks.
Ah, yes, absolutely. So, how long has this journey taken for you since you first were like writing, I'm guessing possibly for fun, to the point where you are now?
Yeah, so like I said, I believe I started Child of Tempest in or started writing in 2017, but it probably might have been earlier. I know by at least 2018, 2017 ish, it was finished. But this writing journey really, it's now been going on about 8 plus years. And the publishing journey has been about 5, or it has been 5 because this is my 5th year publishing and the 5th anniversary of Child of Tempest that I got to celebrate a couple of months earlier this year. Thank you. So again, when I started, I really didn't know what I was doing. I was just kind of, going with the flow. But once I decided I wanted to take it seriously, that I didn't want to do a hands off approach, as in, okay, I'm just going to put these online and, they make their money, they don't make their money. That's not my business. Like, I really wanted to be active in the community and a part of it. That started probably at the end of 2019. That I was like, no, I want this to be a serious venture for me and opportunity for me to explore more of my writing, explore kind of where I can take it. And I think 2022 is when I started really getting the notion of doing the publishing company. I had other authors come to me before and be like, hey, you publish your books, can you publish mine? And I was like, not yet. I'm like, I don't know how to do
It's like, if
like,
only you knew how hard it was just to publish my own.
yes. And again, it was the main thing I wanted to do was, again, I'm always for supporting other small businesses and indie creatives. So I knew I couldn't do it by myself. And if I would have started this a couple years ago, it would have just been a one woman show, which, I mean, in some cases is great. And again, that works for me when I'm just publishing my books, because I know how I am and I know how I'm studious and I know how I'm organized. But that wasn't going to work well if I had done it for other people. And I didn't think I would be doing a disservice to them if I just said, you know what, I got this. I'm going to do everything for you. We're going to publish you. Bada boom, bada bing. We're done. Because again, I want to support other creatives and have their voices be heard. And you can't do that if you're the only voice being, your only voice being spoken to. So really, that's why kind of I took those years to really like research and understand and say, okay, I can do this. I think I could do this. So, last year I really started drumming up. I'm like, okay, yeah, I decided, I was like, yep, in 2024, we're going to open. I have a team that there's someone who can do everything or there's a person that does every part of the publishing process. So we have from book coaching, workshops up to PR and marketing. So, and everything in between. So again, it's not just me, it's a full team of people helping you and supporting you. And in turn, you're also supporting them too. So that's why I was excited, to start now, because I knew like if I had done this earlier, it would have just been Winnie, and it wouldn't have been as smooth sailing as it was now.
Yes, and I think that comes down to something we had chatted a little bit about over email before we ever decided to hop on and talk live. Was really our journeys come down to community when all is said and done. And I think that for those who are watching who are cautious, like, oh, I've heard so much about vanity presses, and I'm worried about a vanity press where they want $20,000 to publish one book, something like that, and take your money and run. There's a big difference often between them encouraging and giving you community versus getting community from within the indie author circle. I have paid editors, I have cover designers, I have proofreaders, I have beta readers. These are fellow people in this community, and you need that buffer to really, I think, expand. And I think what you said earlier about how you went from thinking, okay, I'm going to write my book, I'm going to put it up. If it makes money, if it makes money, if it doesn't, it doesn't. And you were going to get serious. One of the first things you mentioned doing was plugging into the community. So I'm interested really for those who are coming in and discovering this aspect, this whole world of indie authorship, and that you have the ability to publish your own books. Um, how would you suggest somebody go about finding or plugging into a community when you're brand new and you don't know where to go? Hey, Christine.
Oh, hey. My first thing is go to social media. That's usually the easiest way, and also the cheapest way. Make an account and follow some hashtags. Follow some people in the genre that you're trying to write in, and again, make sure they're indie, or even just looking at your bookshelf and looking through those authors and following them. And don't be afraid to be like, "Hey, I'm a new writer. I need help. I'm trying to find an editor. I'm trying to find maybe different types of publishing. I don't really know what that looks like. Does anyone have any resources or links?" Again, we have a very supportive community that's always open to share and support other people. One of my things I've probably been saying now for over a year is that you can never have too many books. Um, Trust and believe. If you look at all the books I have in my that are just stacked in piles right now around my house, yeah, you can never have too many books. So there's a reader out there for everyone's story. So there's no need to be over competition. Like, oh, I'm like, no, your story is yours, and you have your voice, and don't be afraid to use that to ask for help, and ask, what am I doing or how do I do things? Because you will get answers, and you'll be able to, better understand the process, better understand the steps you need to take. And again, get to connect with other people who will connect you with someone else, who will connect you with someone else. And now, again, you have started forming your own community and support system within the publishing or within the book industry. That now you can rely on and communicate with, and again, help you get a published book soon.
Yeah. So, yes, definitely start on social, like you said, is a great tip, and vet your services too, for
Yes.
sure. Vet your service providers.
Yes.
They can be tricky to get in with, and that's one of the things. Like I was looking through your services that you'd set up, and like I saw Angel on there, and I was like, oh, Angel's, going to be on there as a coach, I think, right? So I was
Yes.
just very excited. And you see fellow indies, and you're like, I know this person, and the community adds authority. It adds just really trust there to that aspect, and knowing who you're trusting your book with. Like Winifred said, you're not going to give up your voice working, you know, necessarily with one of the editors that's aligned with her versus a complete stranger that maybe you hire on Upworks or something like that. Now, there's some great editors on Fiverr and Upworks and everything, but it's always nice to have just one other person say, I've used these people, I trust these people, my work was good. So there, I love that aspect. The community is really your village here in the indie community. Not
Oh,
just are they going to
definitely.
read your book and review your book, but they're going to help you get plugged in to real places where you need
Oh,
to be. So,
definitely. And I've been that person where people have popped in and be like, hey, I think you've used them or you've been on their interview or you've done this. Like, can you give me some guidance? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Again,
mhm,
I have no reason to gatekeep and be like, oh, I can't tell you how to get on this website or how to get here or how to that does no favors to me. So
mhm.
if you have a question for me, please feel free to ask me. I'm always I'm always happy to vet whoever comes my way. I usually am the first person to get people go to and be like, okay, Winnie, how good is this person? Like on a scale of 1 to 10, like what was it worth it? And then I always give my honest, like, yes, it was, or if this is what you're looking for, yes. If not, you can skip this one. And again,
Yeah.
and it doesn't hurt, it's all about making sure you get the best quality services and support you can from, what you're trying to do and what you're asking for. Um,
Mhm.
like you said, there are tons of great editors on Upwork and other like Rizzi and all of them. Like there's great editors, but again, it's hard to know how great they will be for you when again, these are strangers, you don't know them.
Mhm.
So it's always nice to know like there's someone you can reach out to, or just again putting it, be like, hey, I'm looking for, quality editors. I'm doing a poetry book. Does anyone know anybody? Has anyone used this person before? Because again, it doesn't hurt to get a little bit of
Yeah.
feedback, and to better straighten out some questions you might have.
Yes, absolutely. Well, this has been fantastic. I'm super excited for where your journey has taken you, not just with your books, but with your business, and wishing you the best of luck with your launch. Super excited to see how that all
Yes.
goes for you. And I know
Oh,
your
trust me,
team's
I am
excited
too.
too. So, yeah, so if you're watching and you're interested in checking out, because I know we've had a lot of people join since we started, and maybe you didn't hear this, I've got Winifred's link to her books and her site in the description box. You can click down there, give her a follow to hear what's new with the business, to hear what's new with her own books. And if you love mythological fantasy like I do, possibly pick up her book too, because that sounds great. I'm very excited. Oh, Lena, thanks for talking with us. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your story.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
Yes, it was. It's my pleasure. Everybody, thank you all for tuning in. We will be back with another indie author behind the scenes video in the next couple weeks, and we're working on some other interviews. I think I already hinted that I'm going to try to bring Lillian on sometime sooner than later. So, yes. And if you'd like to meet more indie authors, and maybe this is your first video and you're like, wait, there's indie authors out there? I have a whole playlist of interviews with authors primarily indie and or hybrid. So go check those out on the channel on YouTube. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye.
y'all. It was great being here.